Hello, everyone, and welcome to part two of our two-part series on personal values and the counseling relationship. Remember, these slides were prepared by Dr. Francis Patterson from the Footprints Consulting Services, and we have to give credit where credit is due. I am Rosette James Smith, and it's my pleasure to be doing these sessions with you. Now, today we're going to look on what we call the bias shelf. Now, the bias shelf focuses on the client. If you notice those arrows, everything pointing towards our client. We explore the conflict, look at things like behaviors, values, and beliefs. As a professional, we have to address our own personal values outside the session. It cannot be that we are pretending or taking over the client's case. We need to be aware that values and beliefs can create biases. You know they are there, but the question is, are they in the box on the shelf? So we have to be aware of our biases. We have to be aware of our values so that we don't impose these on the client. Now, paying attention, it's important to pay attention to the non-verbals. Things like eye contact, handshaking, not sharing information, not giving direct answers, gestures such as crossing legs and pointing, touching the top of someone's head. Now you might wonder what's the reason for all this. Some persons, based on what is happening, they will look a certain way. So they might be holding down their head for a while and you mention something and they look directly at you. It can be sending a message. And that how their hands are, they might be sitting down and they were calm, and then you mentioned a mother and aunt and the hands start shaking or they start rubbing hands, and sometimes we're not sharing information. It might be that you ask a question and they change the subject, or they start to talk about something else, or they just don't answer at all. Sometimes they don't give direct answers. So you ask about the weather and they start telling you about some vehicle. So they're trying to avoid what is happening, avoid dealing with the issue at hand. Some gestures are there too that we have to make a note of. When the legs are crossed and they weren't crossed, some pointing, where they're looking, things like that. Even sometimes how they are crossing their hands, if the hands were relaxed before, but now they're not relaxed anymore. We can't take these things for granted. Sometimes somebody just sit down and they start to just rub their head or rub some part of their body. We have to take note of things like this because they can be signs of a problem. Now we also have to look at how persons' cultural values and differences are in the counseling environment. We have differences coming from things like child rearing practices. Different persons, different socialization. Some persons were grown up in a very strict environment. Some it was more laissez-faire, where the parent allowed the child to really make their own limits. And so different persons will react differently and their perception of things will be different. The next topic, perception of time and promptness. You have some persons who, it was very rigid. They had to get to school on time. They had to get to a certain place on time. And so time was well respected. But there are others who is not like that. And we have to realize that based on how persons were socialized, it might not be a situation where they're disrespecting you when you see them not showing up for a certain time or so. Some persons are so strong in their belief of time that they believe that, boy, you didn't show up, you're disrespecting, you don't have any manners and so what. So we have to know that we understand that different persons are socialized in different ways and have different perceptions of time and promptness. Some persons are half hour early or 10 minutes early. Some persons believe they must come on time. Some persons are into the fashionably late. So different persons, different perception. View of racial differences. Different persons have different views. Some persons might see where they don't speak to certain persons. You have some persons who believe that they mustn't deal with white people, or the other way, they mustn't deal with blacks, right? So there are some persons who have different biases when it comes to races, or they believe that they must talk a certain way if it's a certain race or so. So we have to make sure that we are aware of what is appropriate so that we don't cause any disrespect unintentionally. We have to be aware, and we have to be aware that different races view things differently. So we have to know that somebody might feel strongly about the fact that, for example, the partner should not have spoken to them like that. And you might not see it that way, but you have to realize that different races view things differently. Also, spiritual beliefs are different, and it is not for us to impose our belief on somebody else. So the person might believe that even you as a counselor, they might believe that, boy, you should not be praying without covering the head. So they might ask, as we mentioned in the last recording, that you pray. But then they would have believed that you would have covered your head. But you can let them know that, no, you are free to cover your head. That is something that you believe in, and I respect you for your beliefs. But you don't tell them, no, don't cover your head. We're in the counseling office now, and so we have to respect persons' beliefs, right? Different spiritual beliefs. So you have some persons who in the session will tell you that, boy, it's obvious. When do it, you can't just tell them no. You have to hear what they're saying and then go through and present the different pointers that you are finding. Present the facts, present the things based on what is coming. So if you have other findings, you present them and allow the person. You don't just jump down and shut down somebody's beliefs because they are different from yours. Gender roles. That can be different with different persons, and we cannot decide that, oh, I believe that you should be staying at home as a woman and doing the cooking and the cleaning. A man might come in and believe that. You might not. So you can't just tell a man, oh, you're wrong, because different persons have different beliefs. There are some women who believe that that's their role and they shouldn't be going out and work. And so we have to be careful. It's a thin line. So we have to know our values and be careful we don't impose. The value of education. Education, different persons have different values. So some person will think that education is a priority, some might not. So we can't force it onto somebody. The perception of the family unit and who is included. There are some persons who believe in this big family with cousins and everybody, while there are some persons who is my wife or husband and my children. So we have to know that we listen to what the client is saying. Some persons believe that a nice short shorts is modest, or a nice top as long as it doesn't show their belly, right? So it might not be long or covering much. Different persons, right, have different views. So when you just say to somebody, dress modest, sometimes you have to go a little further, because you might think that, oh, they're coming to the session and you said dress modest and now they're in these short shorts. That's how they might see modest. So you have to be specific, because different persons have different views. Same thing with authority. Different persons have different views. There are some persons who talk to their parents anyhow. And so when you're saying that, is that how you talk to your mother? Possibly it is. So we have to know that we respect persons and realize that not everybody is grown up in the same way, in the same environment. So we have to be understanding. The view of respect and how children interact with parents, as I said, can also be different in different environments. Now we're going to look a little at self-disclosure in the culture of therapy. What is appropriate self-disclosure? or inappropriate self-disclosure. No. Hear this thought: I know the basics of your religion, or something you might have in your office like pictures, cultural wall hanging signs. Sometimes this ends up giving self-disclosure without disclosing, right? There are also cultural implications present, especially chatting prior to doing business, right? No question is what is appropriate from what is not appropriate. And we have to know what is it that is important to say. So questions like, if you're in recovery, if you have kids, you're married, and that when you're going to be out of office, we have to know questions, because these questions might come up, but sometimes there are ways we can go around, because we're not there. You're not the client, so you're not there to share all of your business. So you have to be careful, because sometimes the client is just trying to avoid doing the session, right? So the question is, how much is too much, and whose agenda is in the self-disclosure? That's the question that we must ask ourselves. Who is the self-disclosure serving? Is it serving to make you feel better as a counselor, or is it something that's going to help the client? And we have to know that you give what is necessary to help the client, just enough if it is necessary, because you're not there just not because you have a similar situation to the client means that you need to share the information. It's if it serves the client, not serves the counselor. So you have to know whose needs are being met, right? And are your biases going to come out in the self-disclosure? Because, well, how it ended for you might show a bias and might cause a problem in the case. So we have to be careful. Question: is it necessary to make the client comfortable to have them relate to you? You have to know what you are doing, what you're sharing. Very important, because sometimes it is better not to share. Sometimes sharing can help. Personal beliefs and values. These influence our professional decisions, which affect the client relationship. So our personal beliefs will decide what theory we use, how we approach the client, how we welcome the client. So your professional decisions, and it affects the client relationship. So you will realize that there are some persons who deal with clients differently than others. Looking now at the influence of personal values, knowing ourselves, are you aware of how your personal values influence the professional choices you currently make? Consider how your values influence your decisions in case examples, and challenge yourself for self-exploration. We need to know what is it that we are about. We need to know if our values impact the things that we are doing. We need to know, and self-exploration is what helps with that. Now, some challenging topics: values and client clear. List 3 most difficult topics for you to be objective about with a client. So 3 topics. What personal values or beliefs are challenged with each topic? List at least one type of client that you find challenging, or you think you would find challenging. Think of one situation when you had one of these clients or topics. How did you handle it? What personal value or belief was challenged as a part of your struggle? Were you able to continue to work with this client, or do you think you would have been able to continue working with this client? Do you seek supervision or talk to a colleague if you're having a challenge, like somebody came to talk to you, you're having a challenge? And the question, do you seek personal therapy? Because even doing this course, even now seeking to go further in these different areas, you need to be seeking your own personal therapy. Now the question here, when realities collide, you're meeting a client for the first time from mental health and substance use evaluation. He has been referred by Child Protective Services. He's reportedly actively abusing alcohol and positively other drugs. He has also been accused of molesting his preteen daughter while he was drunk. He's a farmer and presents dressed in denim, overalls, plaid shirt, and work boots. You invite him to take a seat. He sits, crosses his arms defensively across his chest, and states without preamble, "She's my daughter, I'll screw her if I want to." Question, what is your first reaction? And these questions that we're asking, we need you to make notes of them and respond. Would you possibly give the client powerful non-verbal messages? Would you be able to work with this client? Would your judgment or objectivity be impaired to the point that you could not? Do your values have to be congruent with that of the client to work with him effectively? And do you have someone with whom you could consult if this happens? Now, first of all, there are things like the law that we would have to be looking at and considering and helping this person to know consequences. So those are some of the things we'd be helping them to know consequences of actions, and the fact that this child can be removed totally from the house and different things, looking at what their real purpose is, what they want for the child, best interest of the child, things like that. So we wouldn't just jump to conclusion, because probably it is somebody that really doesn't know better. Probably this person has been abused, right? Obviously, the fact that Child Protective Services referred the client to you, it means that child is already getting help. So it's now to help this individual, because we don't want it to happen to other children. So take a minute, to answer the question here. Would anyone like to share some of the clients that challenged you personally? What belief or value is challenged? And remember, as I said, just make notes of the things so that you can respond to them, right? Now, looking quickly at values and honesty. How honest should we be? Sometimes we have to interfere when clients are making poor, harmful, or destructive decisions. Then we need to be honest and open about our views, collaborate with the client in setting goals that fit his or her needs, then step aside and allow the person to exercise autonomy and face consequences. And that is coming from Corey, and Callahan. Now, you might be working with somebody who, like the client we just looked at, who's making these harmful decisions. So you have to share the information, as we said, talk about the law, talk about consequences. But if the person decides that this is not something they're going to adapt or something they're going to take on, then you have to let consequences act out, right? You have to know that you cannot control somebody's actions. Now, we've been mentioning the word imposing for some time, and looking now at imposing versus exposing values. Imposing values, forcing counselor values on the client. So you're not supposed to be forcing your values on the client. Exposing values, helping the client to recognize his or her own values and discuss. That is what we are about. Encouraging different perspectives, for example, like offering a bouquet of flowers, knowing when to discuss values, conflict between the therapist and the client, and use of professional judgment, right? And this bouquet of flowers thing is something that a lot of clients will do, so you have to be careful because it has implications. Any gift giving or things like that, you have to be careful. If there's an arrangement for payment, then you deal with that, but gift giving can cross the boundaries. Now let's look at this case quickly. Victor is a counselor in a drug court program. He's active in the community in charitable events. He keeps flyers about fundraisers on his desk in his office. He encourages clients to give to charities as a part of their growth process. He requires that clients participate in fundraising rallies as a part of the program and community service work. He had a Christmas party for a group session during the holidays and asked clients to bring canned goods or food baskets. Despite objections from co-workers, Victor did not see any ethical or legal problems with what he's doing. What are the ethical issues here? Remember, ethical is where the issues deal with where you can't just find an easy right or wrong to what is happening. And what are the legal issues? So please pause this until you can answer those questions. Counselors directly attempting to influence a client to adopt their counselor values, attitudes, and beliefs, acting passively. We have to, actively or passively, we have to be careful because sometimes we force it on to clients without even realizing. We have to be so careful about imposing values. Now, exposing values, let's listen to this one. Marvin is a marriage and family therapist working with a couple from very different cultural backgrounds. The husband is Native American who was raised on a reservation in the Southwest. The wife is African American, raised in an upper income home in the South. They met while in college. They have 2 children and have come to therapy due to disagreements concerning child rearing practices. Marvin was raised in a home where there was strict discipline with children while expression of love and independence were displayed. Marvin has adopted this with his children also and believes it is a successful method of raising children. The husband believes that the children should be seen and not heard, respect their elders and do as they are told. The wife has a very liberal view of parenting and believes in free expression of children with very little discipline. Marvin does not agree with either approach. During sessions, Marvin encourages each client to discuss their parenting values and explores them with possible compromises and options that would be acceptable to both parents without revealing his view of parenting. So you notice that he has gone through and discussed helping them to share, but none of them are aware that he doesn't agree with any of them. That's how it goes. Our values are our business. That's why we have to know what our values are so we don't impose them. So the question, what's our job? To help clients adopt better values. Is it? Is it to help them to know what is best for the client? Is it? Right? You notice X is there to be a robot, rigid, so we won't contaminate the therapy process. To indoctrinate clients, to teach clients proper behavior, to prescribe happiness, to be a guru and share our infinite wisdom, to preach, instruct, pontificate and persuade, to be a Dr. Phil or a Dr. Laura, to just reflect and clarify without any direction. No, we are not there to force, to take some persons and just change them into different persons. No, they are not robots. We have to work with clients in the best way possible and to help them to discover who they are, to work with their values. And if there is values clarification needed, then we help them with that. But we are not there to change them into little mini-me's or little copies of us. That's not what we are about. So neutrality is important. And the question is this possible? Right? We must express our beliefs in the work we have chosen. We are to know what we need to do, right? So do we really express our beliefs? Express our beliefs to ourselves, know what we believe in, but deal with the issues as they come. Remember the law, right? Remember the different things that you are required to report, because there are things, for example, child abuse, that's not up to you. It's a law and you will get locked up. So you have to be careful. And the question, where do you place your values in the session? You have to know, sometimes you send non-verbal cues, your body language, different things. So you have to be careful that you are not giving these messages to let the client know when they say something, your face make up. So they kind of change you. You're not getting the true session if you do things like that. So the person will give you what you want and then move on to do exactly what they believe. So we need to get the true session. Some further questions. Do therapists direct what clients choose to explore? If the client brings up an issue that is not in line with your beliefs, what do you do? Are client behaviors that challenge your beliefs of right and wrong? How do you address it without being judgmental or shaming? And no issues that bring up your stuff. Can you keep them out of the session? Questions for all of us to consider. Questions for all of us to use in our self-examination, especially this one about clients' behaviors that challenge your belief of right and wrong. How do you address it without being judgmental or shaming? We have to be careful. We are not there to decide what is right. We are not there to judge. So we have to play our part in everything that is happening. We need to know that this is what is not discussed can be value laden and lead to ethical mistakes. So it's like financial dealings with client, insurance, religious, racial issues, GLBT, population, socioeconomic. All of these are ethical issues that we have to be careful about our beliefs. And if it's something you're not comfortable with, you have to know that you let the client know and don't share what is not right. Right? No, we're not going to go through all these slides. Remember, you have this PowerPoint, you have this, so I'm going to ask you to just look through at it because we still want to keep this kind of not too long, even though it's gone 27 minutes already. But we want to focus a little bit on our values enhancement plan. Now, first section, qualified research. Do your research. You are responsible even if you follow poor advice, and be proactive to develop values awareness. It is your responsibility. So make sure that you do your research, even though you might be reporting to somebody. Be competent supervision. You have different views, culturally diverse perspectives. Check credentials, training and experience, ethical professionalism, professional. Make sure you know who you're dealing with, who you are getting help from. External professional development. Learn ways to integrate values and counseling practice. Resources, workshops, reading from qualified resources. And your internal professional development, self-reflection, self-analysis, holistic approach, activities that are enjoyable, stimulating reflectively, and creative expression. So you need to know your things yourself, because you're not going to be just sharing and saying, boy, I didn't understand or not aware, right? And that. No. Quickly, what to consider. Some of the ethical issues present. Client welfare, very important. You have to do what is best for the client. You need to also make sure you're not doing any harm to the client. Confidentiality is a must. Professional responsibility. You have a professional responsibility to the client. Seek supervision with supervisor or peer. Talk to somebody if you are not sure what is happening. Consider your personal values and consider ethical responsibilities. Learning is a part of client care. So be open to learning from clients. Be open to listening, right? So you might have clients that share different things with you. You're not just going to go like, you're this almighty person. But remember, your values are yours. You are not there to impose your values on persons, right? So let's just this little. All right, so as we said, we give total due to Dr. Pattison for this presentation, and go through, look at it again, and any questions, please feel free to contact me, and remember to do the little activities so that we can get the best out of this. Thank you very much for listening.